Thank you, everyone. I'm going to start. I'm going to start with an update from the Chair of the Credentials Committee on today's progress with credentials. So, Chair of the Credentials Committee, Morocco, you have the floor. Technicians, can you give Morocco the floor, please?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Après la réunion du comité de vérification des pouvoirs, la situation actuelle est de 151 parties qui sont présentes et 139 lettres de créance acceptées. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair of the Credentials Committee. So we'll start this afternoon with CoP19 document 16, capacity building. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee. The Chair of the Standing Committee has asked New Zealand to introduce the document. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Sorry, I'll just take my headset off. COP19 Doc 16 reports on progress made in implementation of decisions 18.39 to 18.46 on capacity building. The Secretariat has undertaken a number of actions in implementing decisions 18.44 to 18.45, and these are set out in paragraph 3 of the document. The Secretariat's support of the Standing Committee Working Group is covered in paragraph 4 of the document. It involved issuing a notification to parties with a questionnaire on the development of an integrated CITES capacity building framework in 2020. The details of the responses and other activities by the Secretariat under Decision 1846 were reported to the Animals and Plants Committee for consideration at their joint meeting in June 2021, as called for in Decision 18.46C. The views of the Animals and Plants Committees is summarised in paragraph 5 of the document. The Standing Committee Working Group on Capacity Building met online in October 2021 to consider the inputs and recommendations of the Animals and Plants Committees and to review Resolution Conf 3.4 on technical cooperation with the view to incorporating capacity building needs as directed by Decision 18.43. And this was thanks to generous support from Canada. A summary of the online meeting was circulated for input from the wider working group. On the capacity building framework, the Standing Committee Working Group agreed that a capacity building conceptual framework or strategy is needed. Paragraphs 7 to 13 of the document summarise the key elements of the working group discussion on the components of a capacity building conceptual framework. These discussions, however, were not able to conclude, and the working group agreed that further discussion is required to fully inform the development of the framework. The draft decisions in Annex 2 seek to continue this work in the next intersessional period, reporting to COP20. On the review of Resolution Conf 3.4, the Standing Committee recommends a new resolution on capacity building, which is set out in Annex 1. The working group concluded that Resolution COMP 3.4, which is very old now, had a very narrow purpose in comparison to the broader concept of capacity building. The working group developed a draft proposed text for the new resolution, which incorporates the matters related to capacity building that are routinely repeated in COP decisions on a regular or rolling basis. The preambular text seeks to link closely to the CITES strategic vision and recognises the benefits of capacity building and acknowledges those involved. If adopted, the resolution could be amended as necessary based on the completion of the capacity building framework. The Standing Committee therefore invites the Conference of Parties to adopt the draft resolution on capacity building set out in Annex 1 to the document, adopt the 4 draft decisions on capacity building set out in Annex 2 to the document, and agree that decisions 18.39 to 18.46 have been implemented and can be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I'll open the floor to parties. United States of America, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, we appreciate the chance to participate in this working group and are grateful to New Zealand for its leadership. The United States supports adoption of the draft decisions and draft resolution. We do have some suggested edits. As many have expressed, a capacity building framework would benefit CITES parties. A comprehensive capacity building framework and needs assessment will improve prioritization, coordination, and tracking of parties' capacity needs. If this tool helps parties more easily request specific support, the understanding and investment from donors may increase, and capacity building efforts will be more effective. We note that developing a capacity building framework will be a challenging task, and the Standing Committee may wish to consider hiring a facilitator to engage the parties, of course subject to the budget. The U.S. invests in capacity building activities around the world to support CITES, and we celebrate 2 capacity building efforts in particular today. The United States has a long history of supporting CITES Master's Course. This program has provided development opportunities for professionals from around the globe. Investing in scholars can have a long-term and multiplying effect on conservation. The graduates and scholars of the CITES Master's Course keep us hopeful and inspired. Many are now leaders in global policy and serve as voices for their regions, and we are honored to work with them and know them. We continue to provide scholarships for this prestigious program, and we are currently supporting 29 CITES Master Course scholars from 22 countries in Central, East, and West Africa, many of whom are attending today. We also continue to support CITES capacity building in Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands. The United States recently renewed a cooperative agreement with the CITES Secretariat to improve legislation, implementation of national ivory action plans, and other efforts in these regions. With your indulgence, Chair, and if you would like the specific edits, I would turn to my colleague.
Thank you. We had a few comments on the Secretariat's amendments to the draft resolution, and this is specific to paragraph 4. We support the proposed change to paragraph 4A, and further down in this paragraph, we are concerned about removing consultation with the committees. Input from the Animals and Plants Committees is essential in developing materials on items of a scientific nature. And it's also important for CITES parties to inform the Secretariat's capacity building partnerships with other organizations. As such, we recommend some amendments. Paragraph 4B of the resolution we would like to retain, quote, in consultation with the Standing Committee and with Animals and Plants Committees. And we would like to add text after that so that it reads, in consultation with the Standing Committee and with Animals and Plants Committees, new text, as it relates to the development of new partnerships that have a scientific nexus or new or revised capacity building materials of a scientific nature. In paragraph 4D, we ask to retain the original text that reads in consultation with the Standing Committee and with Animals and Plants Committees. And lastly, in paragraph 4E, we support the new paragraph in general, but we recommend deleting the part that says, including with respect to the CITES virtual college. Thank you, and I'm happy to repeat any part.
Thank you, United States. We might just have you read your new text in 4B after the retention of the reference to the Standing and Animals and Plants Committees. Your piece that starts with as it relates.
Happy to do so. As it relates to the development of new partnerships that have a scientific nexus or new or revised capacity building materials of a scientific nature. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I see Togo. Togo, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Comme c'est la première fois que mon pays intervient, je me permets au nom de mon pays de remercier toute l'assistance possible. Je remercie la nomination du président. Je remercie aussi le pays hôte pour l'accueil chaleureux. Je remercie aussi le secrétariat. En ce qui concerne le document 16, le Togo adhère parfaitement parce qu'avec ce renforcement des capacités, nous a permis aujourd'hui d'envoyer nos étudiants au master, ce qui nous permettra d'avoir une large observation dans le domaine de la CITES. Donc nous soutenons parfaitement ce document 16 présenté par le secrétariat. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Togo. I see Mexico, followed by the European Union, followed by Senegal.
Gracias, señora presidenta. México apoya los proyectos de decisión con las enmiendas de la Secretaría, así como las enmiendas de la Secretaría a la nueva resolución, con la excepción del cambio propuesto en el párrafo 4A. México considera que cualquier parte debería poder solicitar apoyo para la creación de capacidades, aunque se diera prioridad a las partes que se encuentren en las condiciones mencionadas. En este sentido, sugerimos agregar lenguaje a la última parte del párrafo 4A, enmendado por la Secretaría, para que se lea de la siguiente manera. Y expresiones de interés y necesidad directa de las partes, dando prioridad a aquellas de reciente adhesión y los países menos adelantados, los países en desarrollo sin litoral y los pequeños estados insulares en desarrollo. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Mexico, I think we might ask you to read that again slowly and just to be clear exactly where you're suggesting we insert it.
Sí, gracias. Es en los comentarios de la Secretaría, en el párrafo D, subpárrafo 4, letra A, incluir dando prioridad a aquellas, para que se lea dando prioridad a aquellas de reciente adhesión y los países menos adelantados, los países en desarrollo sin litoral y los pequeños estados insulares en desarrollo.
Thank you, Mexico. I think we have that. Then I will call on the European Union. EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the EU and its member states, we commend the Secretariat, Standing Committee, Animals and Plants Committees, parties and working group on the progress made with regard to capacity building. We support the draft resolution on capacity building and the draft decisions to continue work on an integrated capacity building framework with proposed amendments made by the Secretariat. We think that some minor clarifications might be necessary, in particular to clarify the scope of point 2b in the draft resolution. In particular, we would like to add relevant before bilateral and multilateral programs in order to avoid generalization. And we also would like to see clarification with regard to the word participate. If it's not clear if this point is addressed to participants or donors, and we suggest to actually remove the word from there. So basically, and yeah, just the third point, we also suggest to replace development aid by cooperation. So the final version would therefore read, ensure the inclusion of capacity building, including targeted technical enforcement and compliance assistance in the relevant bilateral and multilateral cooperation programs. Full stop. And just one minor point I just realized now, so in comments from the Secretariat, so the text proposed by the Secretariat, in point 4a, in the second line we talk about, so seek external funding and provide capacity building support to parties. For the moment it says particularly needs, I think it should be particular needs. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Sénégal donc s'associe aux autres pays qui ont voulu appuyer et remercier le secrétariat pour le travail qui a été fait. Le renforcement des capacités doit être un élément très important à la bonne marche de la Convention. Et c'est ici l'occasion pour nous, en tant que représentants des pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, de remercier ce qui a été mis en place par les États-Unis, le secrétariat et l'Université d'Andalousie, qui ne cesse que depuis 2016 de former des masters en Afrique de l'Ouest. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes à la 3e promotion, ce qui est bien pour que nos États puissent comprendre comment amener efficacement la Convention. Donc, c'est un aspect très important. Le secrétariat doit être capacité en matériel, en ressources humaines et financièrement pour que le secrétariat aussi puisse venir en appui aux États dans le renforcement des capacités. Si vous regardez bien, en tout cas, le secrétariat n'a pas assez de ressources pour pouvoir aller former les membres des partis. Par le passé, moi-même, j'ai bénéficié de ça. Jusqu'en 2011, le secrétariat faisait des efforts pour prendre en compte la formation des organes de gestion, les autorités scientifiques. Mais depuis un moment, en tout cas en Afrique de l'Ouest, n'eût été l'intervention du programme USAID, on est laissé en rade, sous prétexte qu'il n'y a pas assez de ressources. Donc nous soutenons vraiment cette possibilité de renforcement des capacités pour la bonne marche du service. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. I will take the Democratic Republic of the Congo, followed by the Maldives.
Merci Madame la Présidente de m'avoir accordé la parole. Comme c'est la première fois que mon pays intervient dans notre comité, j'aimerais vous féliciter d'abord pour votre élection et je profite de l'occasion pour féliciter les autorités de Panama pour leur hospitalité. Et je remercie également le secrétariat pour avoir préparé toute la logistique et l'organisation liée à cette conférence des partis. Comme mes prédécesseurs, mon pays également voudrait remercier le secrétariat pour nous avoir préparé les documents COP19, donc et félicite en même temps le programme qui est mis en place en collaboration avec les États-Unis et l'Université internationale d'Andalousie. Grâce à ce programme de renforcement des capacités, mon pays a été bénéficiaire plusieurs fois de ce programme-là en envoyant les personnes à la formation. Moi-même qui vous parle, je suis le fruit de ce programme de renforcement des capacités. Il y a plus de 12 ans, j'en ai été bénéficiaire. J'aimerais également soutenir le projet de décision qui a été préparé par le secrétariat avec ses amendements. Néanmoins, je voulais tout simplement souligner un fait. Je voudrais que le programme de renforcement des capacités soit coordonné au niveau des États par les organes de gestion. Parce qu'il arrive parfois que les organes de gestion apprennent qu'il y a eu des choix qui ont été portés sur des personnes qui ont été envoyées à Baïta pour faire le programme de master sans que ces personnes aient un lien avec l'organe de gestion et sans que ces personnes apportent réellement un appui à la mise en œuvre de la Convention. C'est pour cela que j'aimerais insister, peut-être formuler un amendement pour qu'il soit ressorti clairement la coordination au niveau national des organes de gestion sur ce programme de renforcement des capacités. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Democratic Republic of the Congo. I'm seeing a lot of support. I'm going to close my parties list now, so I have 5 more parties. I do want to take some observers on this, so I will take the Maldives, followed by Benin.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time that the Maldives is taking the floor at Committee 2, we would like to thank the government and people of Panama for the warm welcome and the exceptional hospitality. We would also like to congratulate you on your election as the chair of this committee. The Maldives recently ratified our national legislation on CITES. While this is a big achievement for the implementation of CITES in the Maldives, we are faced with numerous challenges which could benefit from capacity building efforts. Therefore, we welcome the draft resolution and draft decisions on capacity building with the amendments by the Secretariat. We support the development of an integrated capacity building framework aiming to guide parties, the Secretariat, and external partners, and we look forward to providing input as appropriate. As a small island developing state, the Maldives has special and diverse needs. We need technical, enforcement, and compliance assistance to effectively implement CITES in the Maldives. We have specific needs for our enforcement officers and in strengthening our permitting system. In addition to this, we would benefit from training and education programs on CITES as well. We will provide our specific capacity development needs to the Secretariat through direct expression of interest and any other means as described in paragraph 4A of the draft resolution in document 16 to enable the implementation of it as well as the draft decisions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Maldives. Benin, you have the floor.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Le Bénin soutient les amendements qui sont apportés par le secrétariat au projet de décision, au document qui est soumis. Nous voulions également saisir cette opportunité pour remercier donc le secrétariat, les donateurs et l'Université d'Andalousie qui organise ce programme dont nous sommes bénéficiaires et qui, pour le moment, demeure l'un des rares cadres dans lequel les personnes impliquées dans la gestion de la Convention au niveau national dans nos pays sont impliquées. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Niger. Benin. My next party is Niger, and I'm going to take Niger, followed by China, and then Cameroon, and that will close off the parties. Niger, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je voulais, dans l'entame de mes propos, remercier l'USAID, donc à travers les projets Wabik et Wabiled, qui ont pu appuyer quand même l'Afrique de l'Ouest, qui a donné ses premiers fruits d'étudiants en master CITES, dont moi-même je suis bénéficiaire en 2016. Et je voulais dire que les aspects de capacitation ont permis à nos États de s'éclairer, vraiment d'avancer même au niveau des législations nationales, d'avoir des lois CITES au niveau des pays qui, dans le temps, nous n'en avons pas. Ça nous a permis aussi au niveau régional de pouvoir avoir une stratégie régionale de lutte contre la criminalité liée aux espèces sauvages. Donc, ce que je voulais aussi ajouter, c'est de continuer à pouvoir former un grand nombre de cadres dans ce domaine et que les autres bailleurs puissent abonder dans le même sens que l'USAID afin qu'on puisse y avoir vraiment beaucoup de cadres parce que le challenge est grand au niveau de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Donc le Niger soutient cette proposition avec les amendements apportés par le secrétariat. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Niger. China, you have the floor.
And thank you, Chair. China thanks the Secretariat, the Chair of the Standing Committee Working Group, and the Plants and Animals Committee for its substantial input and pioneering work on this issue. China has received a lot of help in building capacity in coordination with all the parties and has made significant progress as we contribute to conserving the global biodiversity. This year marks the 40th anniversary of designating the Endangered Species Scientific Commission as China's CITES scientific authority. We have learned much over the decades and would like to share our expertise with other parties. After celebrating our extensive involvement in the work of the Convention, China's Scientific Authority plans to invite colleagues from other scientific bodies to carry out short-term collaborative research in Beijing as part of our talent exchange program for the CITES Scientific Authority, which is the TISA. And we have sent the concept document for the talent exchange programs to the Secretariat, and we are happy that it has been warmly received by the Secretariat, which has promised its commitment. We also hope to extend invitations to the colleagues as soon as possible after CoP19 to provide more capacity building opportunities, strengthen communications among scientific bodies, encourage scientific cooperation, and response to the Belt and Road Initiative and the framework of the UN's source cooperation. These initiatives, among others, serve to underscore China's firm commitment to conservation of species of flora and fauna. Madam Chair, you are warmly welcome, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, China. My final party is Cameroon. Cameroon, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, de nous passer la parole. Et comme c'est pour la première fois que notre pays prend la parole, nous voudrions remercier le gouvernement du Panama et le secrétariat de la CITES pour l'excellente organisation de cette conférence. Je voudrais aussi vous féliciter, chère Madame, pour votre élection à la présidence de cette commission. Concernant le dossier de renforcement de capacité, il faut dire que la formation est une importance capitale pour l'application de la Convention CITES par les organes de gestion et les autorités scientifiques. C'est pour ça que le Cameroun soutient fortement le projet de résolution et de décision soumis à notre appréciation aujourd'hui. Nous voudrions aussi profiter de cette tribune pour remercier le gouvernement des États-Unis à travers US Fish and Wildlife Service qui octroie des bourses de formation pour nos pays de l'Afrique centrale et particulièrement pour le Cameroun pour la formation en Master CITES à l'Université d'Andalousie. Je voudrais aussi faire remarquer que le Cameroun abrite une école régionale de gestion de la faune qui forme des spécialistes de la faune et dont beaucoup de pays bénéficient de l'Afrique francophone. Et beaucoup de délégations ici disposent en leur sein des anciens diplômés de l'école de faune de Garoua. Notre souhait, c'est de voir que cette école puisse aussi bénéficier directement du soutien des partenaires et du secrétariat de la CITES pour renforcer ses capacités dans ce domaine. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Cameroon. So I think I will open the floor to observers. I'm thinking from parties, I'm seeing a lot of support for the new resolution and decisions. We've done a little bit of work on some of the amendments proposed by the Secretariat, but I think we're generally moving forward. So I will open the floor for observers. So we'll take the International University of Andalusia Master's course. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Dado que es la primera vez que tomo la palabra, quiero felicitarla por su elección para dirigir los debates del Comité 2 y agradecer a Panamá la maravillosa organización de esta conferencia y a la Secretaría CITES por el enorme trabajo realizado para esta reunión. El máster CITES de la Universidad Internacional de Andalucía comenzó en 1998 bajo los auspicios del Comité Permanente y el apoyo de la Secretaría CITES, que participa desde la primera edición impartiendo clases. En 14 ediciones, 390 personas de 106 partes han recibido este máster. Muchas de sus tesis, fin de máster, han resuelto problemas de aplicación de la Convención en sus países. Y en esta conferencia, señora presidenta, están participando más de 100 egresados de este máster en las delegaciones oficiales de las partes, en organismos intergubernamentales y no gubernamentales. En las 3 últimas ediciones, Wabilet y la Autoridad CITES de Estados Unidos, a través de ITAP del Departamento del Interior, han brindado generosa financiación a alumnos de África y Latinoamérica y además facilitaron la interpretación a los 3 idiomas durante toda la parte presencial del curso en la Universidad Internacional de Andalucía en su sede de Baeza. La Secretaría CITES también brindó financiación en la última edición a personas de África, Latinoamérica y Oceanía. La próxima edición será en el curso 2023-24 y continuaremos realizando esta labor de formación con la estrecha colaboración de la Secretaría CITES. Será un placer para la Universidad Internacional de Andalucía recibir a aquellas personas procedentes de países con necesidades de capacitación, tal y como se recoge en el punto 4A del proyecto de resolución sobre fomento de capacidad incluido en el anexo 1 del documento 16. Muchísimas gracias, presidenta.
Thank you, Naya Masters. I have CITES Foundation.
Since this is the first time the CITES Foundation will take the floor at COP19, we would like to thank Panama for hosting the critical work of CITES at COP19. We welcome the critical capacity building amendment. I was privileged to participate in the University of Andalusia's master program just this year. I'm very grateful for this program, and I feel it absolutely optimizes the knowledge base of all who are able to attend. This is critical for a productive CITES. The program also fosters the development of relationships, and this facilitates the ability of all of us to listen, understand, and embrace the position of others. We strongly support this capacity building amendment. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, CITES Foundation. Now I have closed my parties list, but I have Bahrain asking for the floor. Bahrain, do you have a comment on my summation before we took the observers, or is it something else?
Thank you, Chair. Would like to comment on the document. First of all, the Kingdom of Bahrain would like to thank the Standing Committee for this document. Bahrain would like to acknowledge the University of Andalusia and IFA organizations for their effort in capacity building in Bahrain. Along with that, I would like to mention that Bahrain introduced the CITES conventions and other biodiversity conventions in the curriculum of the University of Bahrain for the biology students. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bahrain. Just take one moment with the Secretariat to make sure we've got all of those changes, and I will come back to you shortly. Thank you, everyone. We just wanted to come back to two of the changes that were suggested by the United States and make sure that the parties are happy with them being adopted or not happy with them being adopted. We just didn't hear a lot of reflection back on some of those comments. So I would encourage you as we move on, if you can build upon what your colleagues have suggested, just so we can keep track. So the first one I would like to hear just a few, not a long time, views on is the US's suggested addition to paragraph 4B, which is the addition of the text that starts with as it relates to the development of new partnerships. I hope we both captured that. And then I would like to hear reflections upon the US's proposal to retain in paragraph 4B and 4D the mechanism for the consultation with the Standing Committee and the Animals and Plants Committee. So I will take a couple of views if parties have clear thoughts on those things. Mexico, thank you. You have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. México apoya retener el texto que hace referencia a la consulta de los comités. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mexico. That's very clear. Thank you, everyone. I will just get the Secretariat to provide a few brief comments in response to the changes, and then we'll sum up.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to first thank the delegates and observers for your resounding support to the capacity building work that has been done so far, and also to the development of the capacity building framework, as well as for the new proposed resolution on capacity building. We'll endeavor to make our best efforts to continue to meet developing country parties' needs to implement the convention, and we'll hope to improve that through these two solid bases that will give us a long-term planning tool. With regard to Chair's proposed a question regarding the paragraph 4B and 4D, especially regards to 4D, I would like to just explain the reason why the Secretariat had proposed to remove in consultation with the Standing Committee and with the Animals and Plants Committees, which was to make sure that the Secretariat is able to respond to developing country needs with developing these tools in a more agile and quick manner, rather than having to every time respond and then respond to inputs made by the Standing Committee and the Animals and Plants Committees. So this was basically for practical reasons, that it may become very heavy and cumbersome for Secretariat to be able to engage in capacity building activities if there is a requirement to consult the committees every time in doing so. So perhaps I would like to ask perhaps the United States and Mexico whether they might agree to putting, just to say, as appropriate at the end of retaining this text that has been canceled. Thank you.
I will take nods and thumbs up if that works. Thumbs up from the US. Mexico, thumbs up. Thank you. So concluding our discussion, we are asked to make recommendations regarding the draft resolution on capacity building, the draft, so that's in Annex 1, the draft decisions on capacity building set out in Annex 2, and delete some decisions. So my proposal is that the committee recommends that the COP adopt the draft decision in Annex 1 as amended by the Secretariat, with the additional amendments in paragraph 2B as proposed by the EU. Amendments proposed in paragraph 4 by Mexico and the United States. In our discussion, that we adopt the draft decisions on capacity building in Annex 2, and I would propose that we agree that decisions 1839 through 1846 have been implemented and can be deleted. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to document 30, the Compliance Assistance Program. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee, and I would like to ask the Chair of the Standing Committee to introduce it. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So we are looking at CoP19 Doc 30, which was submitted by the Standing Committee on the Compliance Assistance Program. And this was in response to decisions 18.68 to 18.70. So the Standing Committee at its 74th meeting heard the report of the Secretariat, who noted that thanks to the financial support provided by the European Union and Switzerland, it had established a compliance assistance program. The Standing Committee noted the information on the design of assistance programs to eligible parties and agreed to submit to COP19 amendments to Resolution COP 14.3 Rev COP 18 on CITES compliance procedures, which are contained in Annex 1 of the document. The committee further agreed to submit draft decisions to COP19, which will replace decisions 18.68 to 18.70, and these are found in Annex 2 of the current document. I'll also draw the attention of the room to the additional information provided on cooperation with the University of Andalusia, found in paragraphs 6 and 7 of the report. And the Secretariat had additionally reported to the Standing Committee on meetings and consultations with the GEF and the Global Wildlife Program, and information on this is found in paragraph 8 and 9 of the document. So our recommendations to the Conference of the Parties is to adopt the amendments to Resolution COP 14.3 on CITES compliance procedures contained in Annex 1 to the present document, which reflect the creation of a compliance assistance program, to adopt the draft decisions on the implementation of the compliance assistance program contained in Annex 2 to the present document, and to delete decisions 18.68, 18.69, and 18.70. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Standing Committee. I'll open the floor for parties. I see the European Union.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the EU and its member states, we would like to thank the Standing Committee for the preparation of this document. We support proposed draft decisions on the implementation of the Compliance Assistance Program and also agree with proposed amendments of Resolution COP 14.3 Rev COP 18 on CITES compliance procedures in order to reflect the activities of the Compliance Assistance Program. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, European Union. I see China.
China is the opinion that compliance assessment program is a worthwhile initiative. It can offer opportunities for China to assist other parties, particularly those in the Asia and Africa region. Amendments to Resolution COP 14.3 Rev COP 18 reflects the addition for compliance assistance program and invites parties to provide assistance. They are accessible to us. China also supports the draft decisions and hereby share our expertise and experience in support capacity building in the domain of CITES. China has long attached a great importance to capacity building for developing countries. For example, since 1883, China National Bamboo Research Center has been undertaking the foreign aid training for forestry in China. Up to now, it has already held 11 seminars on wildlife conservation and CITES implementation and trained nearly 2017 compliance personnel from 50 countries, including Asia, Africa, and Latin America. It has contributed its own strength to undertaking international compliance. China's forestry cooperation and exchange with developing countries and helping relevant developing countries to carry out capacity building and has achieved quite obvious effects. In conclusion, China supports all the recommendations in this document and stand ready to offer our support to collaboration with all the parties and select result. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. I see Senegal. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Sénégal voudrait prendre la parole ici pour appuyer ce projet qui est très important pour plusieurs raisons. Parce que, souvenez-vous que nous entreprenons l'inscription de plusieurs espèces. Mais il faut noter que l'inscription est une chose, mais la mise en œuvre en est une autre. Et beaucoup de pays, partis, n'ont pas de ressources suffisantes pour pouvoir développer la mise en œuvre des inscriptions. Et qu'est-ce qui se passe? Les espèces qui sont inscrites, par exemple, à l'annexe 2, continuent d'être exploitées jusqu'à tomber dans la situation mauvaise de l'inscrire en annexe 1. Alors nous pensons que, nous lançons un appel aux donateurs pour mettre beaucoup de ressources financières dans ce programme pour qu'une assistance vraiment particulière soit orientée dans la mise en œuvre des inscriptions et des dispositions de la CITES. Parce que beaucoup de nos espèces sont inscrites aux annexes, mais la mise en œuvre, nous n'avons pas les ressources pour pouvoir les développer. Les quelques espèces que nous avons pu trouver des partenaires via les ONG qui sont affiliées à la CITES nous ont permis de développer vraiment des activités de mise en œuvre. Mais cela doit être systématique parce qu'il ne sert à rien d'inscrire une espèce. Après, bon, ça s'arrête là jusqu'à ce qu'elle tombe dans les critères d'inscription à l'annexe 1, ce qui est une catastrophe. Donc, les espèces qui sont inscrites annexe 1 comme annexe 1 doivent bénéficier d'un programme d'aide pour que la mise en œuvre puisse les sortir de la situation qui a prévalu leur inscription dans ces annexes. C'est en cela que le Sénégal s'associe fortement à cette demande de financement de programmes d'assistance aux États. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. I see Togo.
Oui. Oui, merci beaucoup de nous avoir donné encore la parole. Et par rapport à ce document, je veux affirmer que, à l'instar des autres pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest ou des autres pays en développement, nous avons vraiment besoin, nous avons toute une liste de besoins que nous devons satisfaire pour une bonne mise en œuvre de la CITES. C'est en cela que le Togo soutient ce document sur le programme d'aide de respect de la Convention à l'instar de nos collègues du Sénégal. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Togo. I see the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, de la parole. Comme mes prédécesseurs, la République démocratique du Congo soutient fortement ce programme d'aide d'application à la Convention et trouve qu'il est très indispensable parce que la CITES demande beaucoup aux États. Les États ont parfois plusieurs priorités. Il est parfois difficile de se concentrer sur seulement ce que la CITES demande. La CITES, c'est une convention trop exigeante. Il y a beaucoup de recommandations. J'ai fait l'exemple des recommandations adressées à mon pays dans le cadre du plan d'action national de l'Ivoire. Il n'y a pas d'accompagnement, il n'y a pas d'appui. Il y a même la procédure de mise en œuvre de l'article 13. Il n'y a pas d'appui pour accompagner mon pays dans ce domaine, alors qu'il a beaucoup de priorités, notamment la lutte contre les terroristes, les groupes armés. Il y a beaucoup de problèmes au niveau de nos pays. Voilà pourquoi je soutiens fortement ce programme et j'aimerais qu'il soit réellement concret, qu'il puisse se réaliser, que les moyens soient réellement mobilisés. Que ça ne puisse pas rester sur le papier et que les moyens puissent être bénéficiaires aux États, surtout les États qui sont sur l'article 13 et qui sont sous le processus du plan d'action national de l'Ivoire et même le processus d'étude du commerce important de certaines espèces. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Democratic Republic of the Congo. I see Guinea.
Merci, Madame. Une fois encore, je crois que l'essentiel a été dit déjà par les collaborateurs de la sous-région, mais cela ne tienne. Nous pensons que la Guinée, dans sa position actuelle, soutient vraiment ces moyens qui doivent être déployés pour le renforcement des capacités. Parce qu'avec le renforcement des capacités, cela permettra de garantir la compréhension de la lutte contre la criminalité transnationale organisée, son ampleur, sa portée, afin de combattre efficacement et de façon adaptée. Donc il est très urgent pour nous de soutenir cette position manifeste pour garantir la bonne compréhension et la maîtrise de la législation de nos faunes et de nos flores, parce que c'est vraiment une procédure vraiment qui est souhaitable maintenant. Donc nous nous alignons sur cette position déjà prise par les autres de la sous-région. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Guinea. I have 3 more parties requesting the floor, so I'll take those 3 parties before I go to observers. So I have Benin, followed by Burkina Faso, followed by Mali. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Bénin est très heureux que nous puissions aborder ce point juste après le point 16 qui a parlé des renforcements de capacité. Parce qu'après mon passage à Baeza au cours de cette année, j'ai pu me rendre compte combien nous avons des difficultés à mettre en œuvre convenablement la Convention dans nos États. Donc ce programme vient à point nommé et le Bénin soutient donc fortement sa mise en œuvre. Merci.
Thank you, Benin. Burkina Faso, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Burkina Faso se réjouit de l'adoption de ce document parce qu'il va permettre d'aider certains pays qui sont en retard par rapport à la mise en œuvre de la Convention, d'avoir les aides nécessaires pour mettre en œuvre efficacement la Convention. Il faut dire que dans certains de nos pays, surtout en Afrique de l'Ouest, il y a au niveau des organes de gestion une instabilité au niveau du personnel. Donc souvent, il y a un perpétuel recommencement pour la maîtrise même de la Convention, des textes de la Convention et des dispositions qui sont prises souvent au niveau national pour la gestion de la Convention. Donc nous trouvons que ce document est la bienvenue et à l'instar des autres pays, nous soutenons fortement ce document. Merci.
Thank you. I've had 2 more parties add their name to the list, so I'm closing my list with 3 more speakers, to be clear. I do want to give these parties the opportunity to speak, but we do need to keep moving. So I have Mali, I've called for Mali. I will take Gabon and I will take Nigeria, and then we will hear from observers. So Mali, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame, de m'avoir donné la parole.
le Mali adhère vraiment à ce programme. Pour la raison toute simple, ceux qui ont suivi les débats le 13 ont bien compris que la nécessité de soutenir les États se pose, parce que les insuffisances sont dues à beaucoup de facteurs. Soit la compétence n'y est pas, pour l'avoir, il faut organiser des formations. Donc, tout comme le programme de formation, le programme d'appui aux États est une nécessité. Donc, le Mali appuie cette décision. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Marley, and I do appreciate everyone keeping their interventions brief. Gabon, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Gabon soutient véritablement ce document 30 relatif au programme d'aide au respect de la Convention, qui est un aspect important de la mise en œuvre de la Convention, comme l'ont sans cesse répété mes prédécesseurs ici présents, et remercie notamment le comité permanent d'avoir soumis ce document. Vu l'importance de ce document, justement, le Gabon recommande fortement que le nombre de pays bénéficiaires proposés à l'annexe 3 soit revu à la hausse, si c'est possible de le faire, vu qu'ici, il est proposé 6 pays ou 2 sous-régions et que la CITES a plusieurs États membres qui ont certainement besoin d'être accompagnés dans la mise en œuvre de la Convention. Le Gabon recommande que ce chiffre soit revu à la hausse. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Gabon. I think we note your suggestion, and I will take Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. Nigeria would like to align herself with other parties in the sub-region on this capacity building. So Nigeria is strongly support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nigeria. I would like to open the floor for some observers, for brief interventions from observers. Sorry, parties, I have closed my list for parties. Not seeing any observers wishing for the floor. Guinea-Bissau, and given that's the case, I will give you the floor. Guinea-Bissau, you have the floor.
Bom, a Guiné-Bissau é dos países muito rico em biodiversidade, então nunca pode se abandonar o CITES e quer sempre implementar o CITES para que as espécies sejam protegidas. Por isso, vamos apoiar o documento para o bem-estar da nossa ou da África Ocidental também. Muitas graças.
Thank you, Guinea-Bissau. I do have one observer asking for the floor, so I'll take you. Pan-African WC Network.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. C'est la première fois que notre réseau intervient. Et nous venons de parler des questions de formation et d'appui. Nous constatons que en Afrique, dans plusieurs régions, aujourd'hui, l'insécurité se développe. Et nous sommes en train de perdre beaucoup d'agents de terrain. Et lorsqu'on développe ces formations et que, pour moi, je pense que c'est le meilleur lieu, la meilleure occasion de donner quelques notions à ce personnel qui de jour et de nuit se lance sur le terrain et qui n'a aucune notion de se protéger, qui a juste l'intention de protéger la faune, mais malheureusement ne sait pas se protéger lui-même. Donc, il serait question d'ici à là de revoir les programmes de formation pour que, au moment où on voudrait les lancer sur le terrain, qu'ils puissent se protéger avant de procéder à la protection des animaux. Moi-même qui vous parle, j'ai perdu un petit-neveu directement cette année. Donc c'est des coups durs que nous vivons sur le terrain. Je viens du Bénin. Dans le parc W, il y a 7 qui sont partis d'un coup parce qu'ils sont tombés par inattention ou qui n'avaient pas de notion de se protéger. Et c'est des choses comme ça que nous vivons et c'est presque dans toutes les régions. Dans toutes les régions, l'insécurité se développe dans nos aires protégées. Je pense que ce volet, même si c'est pour quelques 10 heures de formation, il faudrait que la CITES commence à voir comment est-ce que dans leur curricula ou dans le curricula, ces types de formations peuvent précéder à la formation purement technique. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. So I think we've heard complete support with the document. So I will just take one moment and come back to you with our decisions. So I'm going to ask the Secretariat to reflect upon our discussion. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente. La Secretaría quisiera aprovechar la ocasión para agradecer a la Unión Europea, a Suiza y a los Estados Unidos por su generoso apoyo técnico y financiero a este programa. También quisiera saludar y celebrar la presencia de más de 100 egresados del Máster de Badesa en esta reunión. Contamos con ustedes para apoyar a los países en la implementación de los compromisos que adquieren con esta convención. Del mismo modo, deseamos felicitar a la señora Margarita Clemente y a la señora Mercedes Núñez por su encomiable labor desde hace más de 20 años en la formación y el fortalecimiento de capacidades de la comunidad CITES. Estamos muy agradecidos. Nos gustaría resaltar que en la actualidad el objetivo del programa de asistencia para el cumplimiento es proporcionar apoyo técnico y financiero adaptado a las fortalezas y a las necesidades de cada una de las partes que son elegibles para este programa. Nos gustaría revisarlo a la alza si recibimos más fondos y en el futuro quisiéramos proporcionar este apoyo de manera más cercana a las regiones y pasar de un enfoque nacional, si posible enfoques regionales, para proporcionar apoyo subregional como la África del Oeste, con el fin de hacer frente a las dificultades y a los problemas de cumplimiento que comparten en común las partes de una misma región. Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Secretariat. So following our discussions, it's my conclusions that Committee 2 recommends that the COP adopt the amendments to Resolution COMP 14.3 Rev COP 18 on CITES compliance procedures contained in Annex 1 to the present document, adopt the draft decisions and the implementation of the Compliance Assistance Program contained in Annex 2 to the present document, and delete decisions 1868, 1869 and 1870. We'll move on to COP19 document 31, countrywide significant trade reviews. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee and incorporates draft decisions proposed by the chairs of the Animals and Plants Committees, and I believe the chair of the Animals Committee will introduce the document. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, I present this document on behalf of the Standing Committee. At COP18, the Conference of the Parties adopted decisions 1871 and 1873 on country-wide significant trade reviews. The Secretariat was tasked to provide advice as to whether the scientific and management issues identified in the country-wide review of significant trade for Madagascar can be integrated into other existing CITES mechanisms or program activities, including capacity building activities in the proposed compliance assistance program, or whether a new mechanism should be developed to provide targeted support to parties at the national level. It was also tasked to determine how parties might qualify or apply for support under a country-wide review, under existing mechanisms or any new mechanism. And finally, also to provide a report on these matters to Animals Committee, Plans Committee, and Standing Committee. The three committees should review the report and make recommendations as appropriate to COP19 for any further work. At COP18, parties also adopted decisions 1839 to 1846 on capacity building and decisions 1868 to 1870 on the compliance assistance program, which are presented in Annexes 2 and 3 to this document, respectively. There is interdependence and complementarity among the three sets of decisions on country-wide significant trade review, capacity building, and the compliance assistance program, and the three issues might have to be dealt with in parallel. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, only one online meeting of the scientific committees could be held, and the work as envisaged could not fully be completed. In light of the interdependence and complementarity with the work on the CAP and capacity building, the Animals and Plants Committees agreed at AC 31, PC 25 that it was premature for them to evaluate whether the scientific and management issues identified in the country-wide review of significant trade from Madagascar could be addressed through the CAP, or whether a new mechanism should be developed to provide targeted support to parties in relation to the review of significant trade at the national level. At SC 74, the Standing Committee considered the report by the Secretariat on the implementation of Decision 1871 and 1872 in document SC 74 Doc 31, which presented a review of existing CITES mechanisms and program activities, including the Compliance Assistance Program and the ongoing work on capacity building. The Chair of the Animals Committee, speaking on behalf of the Animals and Plants Committees, noted that the CAP could not fully replace a dedicated country-wide review of significant trade process, and suggested that further time be taken to consider whether a new mechanism for targeted support to parties at the national level should be developed. The Standing Committee agreed with the Animals and Plants Committees and tasked them, in collaboration with the Secretariat, to propose draft decision to the COP to continue this work. The chairs of the Animals and Plants Committee therefore propose in Annex 1 to the present document draft decisions for adoption at COP19. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Animals Committee. I'll open the floor for parties. I see the United States of America. US, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States supports adoption of the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to Document 31. In addition, the United States supports the recommendation of the Secretariat that decisions 18.71 to 18.73 can be deleted as they have been completed or are incorporated into the new draft decisions. The draft decisions mirror the discussion and recommendations of the Animals and Plant Committees at AC 31, PC 25, and the Standing Committee at SC 74, as well as Decision 18.73 with an updated timetable. The draft decisions will provide the Animals and Plants Committees more time to consider whether a new mechanism for targeted support to parties at a national level should be developed and make recommendations, including possible amendments to existing resolutions or the creation of a new resolution to be considered by the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. I'm not seeing any other requests for the floor from parties. I'd like to open the floor to observers. If there are any observers who would like to take the floor. Okay, not seeing any other requests for the floor. It's my conclusion that the committee recommends that the Conference of the Parties adopts the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to the present document, and as the US has picked up, also recommends the deletion of decisions 18.71 to 18.73 as they have been deleted or incorporated into the new decisions. Thank you. We'll move on to document 13, COP19 document 13, engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities, has been submitted by the Standing Committee. And I believe the Standing Committee Chair has asked Kenya to introduce the document. Kenya, you've asked for the floor. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee. Madam Chair, at its 18th meeting, the Conference of Parties adopted Decision 17.57 as revised in COP18, 18.31 and 18.34 on engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities as follows. That the Standing Committee was to examine the terminology used in different resolutions and decisions when referring to Indigenous peoples, local communities, or rural communities, and B, make recommendation to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties on whether there is need for consistencies of terminology across these resolutions. Madam Chair, the Standing Committee was tasked to establish an intersessional working group to consider how to effectively engage Indigenous peoples and local communities in the CITES processes, taking into account the discussions from the last intersessional period and any information provided pursuant to Decision 18.32 and present its finding and recommendation to the Standing Committee. And when establishing this intersessional working group, endeavor to achieve regional balance of parties and observers and give special consideration to participation of representatives of Indigenous peoples and local communities. And C was to develop non-binding guidance that proponent parties may use as appropriate in consulting with the Indigenous peoples and local communities as part of the consultation that may take place on proposal to amend the appendixes, and D, make recommendations on the engagement of the local community. There was a directive to the Secretariat, and it's contained in 18.32, Chair. And Kenya chaired this working group, and the standing committee made some proposal. I think there were challenges that arose out of the COVID situation that did not make us meet as was required, and there's a proposal to extend the mandate of the working group. So, Madam Chair, the recommendations are contained on 18AA, 19AA, and Annex 1 of this document for consideration by the Conference of Parties. I submit.
Thank you, Kenya. I'll open the floor for parties. And I see the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, m'avoir accordé la parole. Je remercie les auteurs qui ont préparé ces documents, notamment le Kenya, qui a présidé le groupe de travail. Et nous avons compris, certes, les difficultés liées à la Covid, qui n'a pas permis au groupe de travail de terminer son travail. Et voilà pourquoi mon pays soutient la proposition qui est contenue dans ces documents de pouvoir prolonger les mandats des groupes de travail, et nous allons y participer pour que ce travail puisse être finalisé. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I see China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Engagement of the indigenous people and the local communities has been 6 years since it was first raised in 2016 at CoP19, and regrettably, progress has been quite slow. China considers the rights and the needs of local people are important elements in addressing conservation problems and delivering sustainable outcomes. The experiences of other organizations and MEAs are valuable and show various ways by which the views of IPLCs can be integrated into decision-making processes. Madam Chair, we believe it is time to speed up the processes in CITES. China supports all 3 revised draft decisions in Annex 1 to CoP19 Doc 13 and recommends they be adopted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. I see Suriname.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the first time that Suriname has taken the floor, I would like to congratulate you with this chairing this committee, and I'd like to thank the hosting country, Panama, and its people. In regards to this document, so in Suriname, we not only have indigenous community, we also have tribal community. So we suggest to include or to consider to include within the terminology indigenous community, tribal, and local community in the document. Thank you.
Thank you, Suriname. I see Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada is pleased to intervene on this important document and set of proposed decisions. Canada regrets the circumstances of the previous intercessional period, notably the COVID-19 pandemic, have impeded the ability of the Standing Committee to significantly advance their consideration of the engagement of Indigenous peoples as well as local communities. For this reason, Canada supports the renewal of the decisions taken at CITES CoP19 as found in Annex 1 of the current document. Canada can also support the additional decision directed to parties as proposed by the Secretariat in their comments. Canada feels the Convention can only benefit from the enhanced engagement of Indigenous peoples and communities closely associated with the conservation, sustainable use, and management of wildlife species. It is, in our view, essential that we, as parties, consider what mechanisms and opportunities exist or should be created to support the engagement of Indigenous peoples in CITES decision-making processes. Such a discussion in the Standing Committee can, for example, consider the barriers that might exist to such engagement, such as the lack of resources, and how such barriers might be overcome. The committee can additionally consider issues such as the role and particular rights of Indigenous peoples in the implementation of CITES and draw lessons from the experience of other multilateral agreements and international fora. Canada looks forward to actively participating in the future discussions within the Standing Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I see Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana thanks the Standing Committee for submission and presentation of the 13 on the engagement of Indigenous people and local communities and the revised decisions annexed to it. Botswana supports the decision to extend the task of the Intersessional Working Group to COP20 as it could not complete its work due to the stated reasons in the document. Botswana would like to propose for a change of the chairmanship of the working group to allow other parties with keen interest on the subject matter to facilitate in order for the group to be progressive. This matter needs to be concluded urgently as it affects the very people who incur cost of living with species, and therefore it deserves to be treated with seriousness it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Botswana. I see Togo.
Alors, merci beaucoup. Je n'ai pas entendu le nom du pays, comme on l'a déjà dit. Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous soutenons l'extension du mandat du groupe de travail sur l'engagement des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales. Nous soutenons également l'intervention des prédécesseurs qui sont d'accord pour ce document qui vise à modifier la décision pour assurer un équilibre régional et la représentation des observateurs en veillant à ce que toutes les parties prenantes aient le statut officiel d'observateur. Le mandat du groupe de travail devrait inclure l'examen de la terminologie utilisée par le droit international statutaire et coutumier. Par ailleurs, nous estimons que les discussions sur l'engagement des PACL devraient intervenir au niveau national conformément à la résolution COP 16.6 sur les moyens de subsistance et la décision 18.33b. La proposition du secrétariat de modifier la décision 19.AA pour impliquer les PACL dans la prise de décision CITES au niveau international n'est pas nécessaire, puisque Toutes les parties intéressées peuvent déjà participer à la CITES en demandant le statut d'observateur. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Togo. Now, you've made a point that I was just about to make, in that I would really like to hear from some local communities and the observers. So I'm going to close my party list now with the parties that have already pressed their button, and then I will go to observers. So I will take party interventions from the United Kingdom, Zambia and Uganda, and then I will come back with the rest of my list. Thank you. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK recognises the importance of effective engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES. Multiple CITES and livelihoods case studies in IBS sustainable use of wild species assessments show that the effective conservation of species requires the involvement of people and the understanding of the supply chain dynamics. Whilst we understand the unavoidable delays in progressing this work since COP18, we very much wish to see progress made on this important matter. We consider that early active consultation at a national level with IPLCs and other stakeholder groups most affected by any potential new CITES controls is one of the most effective means of enhancing the robustness of proposals and ultimately the quality of COP decisions. The UK therefore fully supports the continuation of the intersessional working group adoption of the decisions outlined in the document, including those proposed by the Secretariat. We look forward to continuing our engagement in the working group. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me an opportunity to make a reflection on this one. I strongly feel that the views of the IPLCs is very, very important with regards to conservation. And I also want to ride on the comments that our colleagues from China, as well as Botswana, mentioned, where we have 6 years and no movement. And I think that's embarrassing. From my perspective, Chair, is that if you look at a country such as Zambia, 33% of the landmass, which is 752,000 square kilometers, is protected area, and that is the land that has been denied out of these local communities. So I think it's very important that we take cognizance of this particular aspect. So on that score, Chair, Zambia supports the relevant draft decisions that would promote continued incorporation of livelihoods into CITES, and also making sure that what we've seen as an example in Zambia is the sustainable utilization of wildlife, which is constant engagement of communities as conservation partners. We have seen, and obviously with trophy hunting in Zambia, that has been used as a successful model in engaging conservation and sustainable use. Now that in itself has shown communities being uplifted from abject poverty. And if these particular communities are not engaged, it becomes a bit difficult for us to win in terms of conservation. And also, one of the proposals that was raised by our colleagues from Botswana, maybe we might want to consider changing, obviously, the chair for that particular committee to really get a bit of traction, having looked at the 6 years that we've just not done much with that respect. I submit, Chair.
Thank you, Zambia. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Uganda would like to join the rest of the team and the parties to acknowledge the relevance and importance of engaging local communities and indigenous peoples. Madam Chair, I would like to report that recently in July 2022, Uganda joined several African parties during the inaugural African Protected Area Congress held in Kigali, and the issue of engaging local peoples and indigenous communities in protecting wildlife resources featured prominently in our discussions. And the outcome of the Congress, what we call the Kigali Call for Action, largely highlights the need to actively engage the communities and have them benefit from these resources. Uganda takes note of the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 outbreak and the need to finalize this assignment. We know we've registered some delays, but we also appreciate the challenges involved. So Uganda, therefore, supports the proposal to extend the mandate of the current working group to finalize the assignment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. So my next group of parties will be Namibia, followed by the United States, followed by Kenya. Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the floor. Namibia would like to join others in thanking the Standing Committee for submitting document CoP19, Doc 13. Chair, engagement of indigenous people and local communities in CITES processes, in our view, is vital, as our conservation programs are only successful because of the involvement of our local communities. As a result, Namibia voluntarily joined the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group on this issue. And as indicated by the current chair of the working group, which is Kenya, the working group could not meet. It is our opinion that the work of this working group is very important and therefore strongly believe that the working group should continue its work. Chairperson, Namibia therefore supports the adoption of the revised decisions as contained in document CoP19, Doc 13, Annex 1, directed to the Secretariat and the Standing Committee. Additionally, we are also in support of the draft decisions directed to the parties contained on page 3 of the English version of the document CoP19, Doc 13, as suggested by the Secretariat. Chair, we appreciate attempts by Kenya to lead this working group, and we also appreciate the challenges experienced. However, we support Botswana and Zambia that we should consider changing the chairmanship of the working group. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Namibia. I see the United States of America.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States believes that effective engagement of indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES decision-making is critical to the successful implementation of CITES decisions. We believe the parties should engage indigenous peoples and local communities in their national processes via the consultative processes already provided in existing CITES resolutions, with the addition of supportive, non-binding guidance to be developed under decisions taken at this meeting. The United States supports the renewal of decisions 18.31 and 18.32, but does not support the renewal of decision 17.57. The term indigenous peoples and local communities is well established in international fora, and we believe it is up to individual countries to determine what constitutes a local community. We support the recommendation of the Secretariat to add a decision directed to the parties to engage indigenous peoples and local communities. In CITES decision-making and implementation processes, however, we believe this should occur at the national level. We note that this language, with amendments here, is also found in Annex 1 of COP19 Doc 14 Livelihoods. Like Toga, we oppose the Secretariat's addition in Decision 19.AA of an international. With reference to engaging indigenous people and local communities at the international level, we maintain a recommendation that parties consider including representatives as members of their delegates consist with Resolution Conference 16.6, revised COP18. If a working group is mandate is extended into the next intersessional period, the United States would welcome participation in, as we have done in the last intersessional period. And we hope that we can be completed on this important issue of engaging Indigenous peoples and local communities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Did you have an additional comment, United States? United States, you have this floor.
Madam Chair, I would like to note that the United Republic of Tanzania, our neighbors, would like to be recognized. They're having technical difficulties with their microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanzania. I think the technicians are aware of your issues. We'll see what we can do.
Nice.
Tanzania, I will come to you just in a moment, and perhaps if your microphone's not working, you can speak in a neighbour's microphone. So the next on my list is Kenya, followed by New Zealand. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Kenya do support the extension of the mandate of the intersessional working group. And Madam Chair, just like US, we think engagement of Indigenous people and local communities in CITES decision-making and implementation process will be key at national level to better achieve the objectives of the convention, because it goes just beyond sustainable use. Madam Chair, we therefore do not agree with, just like US, with the proposed addition of the word international in the decision 19.AA. Madam Chair, we did our best based on the best circumstances as a chair of this working group. But in the interest of moving the process fast, I will propose, Chair, that we reconstitute this group so that the group can elect their chair, other than saying it's squarely on the chair. The issue was not the chair. Maybe with the revised mandate of the group, it is a better time to reconstitute the group, to have both parties and non-parties to participate and get a vibrant chair that can work during COVID times and ensure that we achieve the mandate that is being given if the Conference of Parties agree to the extension of this working group, which is very key. We do believe local communities are very important in the conduct of CITES work and also in the management and conservation of our natural capital. So it is our conviction, other than talking about change of a chair, let us reconstitute it. This is a very important subject. It will help us also define who is this indigenous person, who is a local community. I think our understanding of a local community in every national context is totally different. So I think this is a very important group. And Madam Chair, our proposal is not just to change a chair, but reconstitute the group, so that they can proceed with the mandate, and we happily relinquish that chairmanship, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. New Zealand, you have the floor. Sorry, New Zealand, we can't hear you. Technicians. It appears to me that Tanzania has the mic at the moment rather than New Zealand. And I can see that Tanzania's mic is on.
Thank you, Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania notes with concern that the intersessional working group has not met as agreed at COP18. Yet we all know that indigenous and local communities are key to sustainable wildlife conservation. Madam Chair, in Tanzania, for example, nearly 75% of our wildlife population is in local community lands. And this means that engagement of these local communities is of paramount importance in all CITES matters. We therefore welcome the decision and recommend that the Secretariat should devise a mechanism to ensure that intersessional working groups execute their mandate and report as appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanzania. I'm pleased we got to hear from you. New Zealand, we might try again. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Great, thanks. The issue of Indigenous peoples and local communities' participation in CITES decision-making processes has been raised repeatedly at CITES meetings for many years, as we've heard from other speakers. New Zealand recognises the value and contribution that Indigenous peoples and their communities bring to our species management. And we see the Standing Committee Working Group on this item having an important role in considering participatory mechanisms in CITES processes. I note at COP19 we are considering related documents on this topic, particularly Document 13 and Document 15, and I want to refer specifically, if you'll allow me, to COP19 INF Document 29 associated with Agenda Item 15. This document usefully summarises the experience of other UN conventions and organisations in this matter, and it's very useful to see in this document the leadership that other conventions, such as the Convention on Biological Diversity, and other organisations are demonstrating in this space. We suggest that the Indigenous Peoples and Local Communities Working Group consider this INF document as part of their work under 18.31A. For this reason, we support the decisions in Document 13 being renewed, with an addition to Decision 18.31A to include reference to COP19 INF 29. We do look forward to consistency in terminology across documents, the documents we use for Indigenous peoples we do look forward to consistency in terminology across our CITES documents. Ideally, the terminology could be used consistently and work amongst all the different countries with their own unique settings in this space. New Zealand welcomes the opportunity to continue our membership of the Indigenous Peoples and Local Communities Working Group and to contribute to this important discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I will take my last two parties before I turn to observers. I will take Gabon, followed by Switzerland.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Gabon remercie le comité permanent pour la soumission de ce document relatif à la participation des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales et soutient l'extension du mandat du groupe de travail. Toutefois, nous ne soutenons pas la proposition du secrétariat de modifier la proposition de décision afin d'étendre les consultations des communautés locales au niveau international. En effet, nous estimons que ces décisions devraient se faire au niveau national, car on le sait bien, lorsque les parties se présentent aux conférences des parties, aux réunions des comités, elles se présentent avec une seule voix. D'autre part, toutes les parties prenantes intéressées peuvent participer à la CITES en demandant le statut d'observateur. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our statement is in relation to the three documents in relation to IPLC, rural communities and livelihoods. It is the view of Switzerland that this is a very important topic that needs the necessary attention and involvement of parties. This even more so after the publication of the thematic assessment of sustainable use of wild species by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, CITES, in the summer of this year. In this assessment, the importance of use of wild species for local communities and their livelihoods and the lack of their involvement in the decision process at an international level are clearly highlighted. That is why the Standing Committee also proposed decisions in relation to the analysis of these outcomes in EPAS for CITES and proposed decisions accordingly in document CoP19, Doc 17.3 on EPAS. It will be very important when refining these decisions in 17.3 into terms of reference for the relevant work that it draws from the experience made under the work presented in Agenda items 13, 14, and 15, and does not create duplicative work, but that there is communication between these two work streams. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland. So I'd like to open the floor now to observers. Thank you, observers. I will take IUCN, followed by CIC, and then I will take Ambercelli. So IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of IUCN, Traffic and WWF. The issue of engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities is of critical importance for CITES, as they possess a vast amount of unique knowledge that can help ensure CITES implementation is effective. Decisions 17.57, Rev COP 18, 18.31 and 18.32, all adopted at COP 18 on this issue, were not able to be implemented, and some important tasks remain outstanding. For example, the decision provided for the development of non-binding guidance that parties may use in consulting with Indigenous people and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices. Such guidance hasn't been developed. So we therefore welcome this decision to renew the COP18 decisions, and in particular to re-establish an intersessional working group to take this agenda forward. We will be keen to participate in the intersessional working group if formed and provide technical support as needed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. CIC, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is the first time we're taking the floor, we would like to thank the Government of Panama for hosting this important meeting. And having given the floor for the first time, allow me to congratulate you for having been elected to chair this committee with an outstanding and extremely challenging agenda. Madam Chair, I'm making this intervention on behalf of the CIC and many other conservation organizations, the names of which we will be providing later on. We support the parties to adopt the revised decisions contained in the Annex 1 to the document 13. However, we are concerned that without a system for IPLCs to participate in the CITES decision-making, it will be impossible to advance species and habitat conservation. It comes as a great concern that, contrary to other MEAs, currently CITES, which has been in existence for 50 years, still does not have a mechanism allowing for robust participation of IPLCs in CITES decision-making processes. Without a proper system or an established process which will allow for the IPLCs to participate in decision-making, CITES will fail to enhance significantly the principal conservation objectives that it might otherwise achieve by fully including IPLCs in the decision-making mechanisms of the Convention. One way forward, to which we would fully agree, would be encouraging parties to allow IPLCs both on the national and international levels to better engage in the decision and implementation processes as proposed by the CITES Secretariat through the Annex Draft Decision. However, having dealt with this issue for at least 6 years, we do not have the luxury to further delay this process. There is a sense of urgency in establishing a comprehensive mechanism for IPLC engagement in CITES decision-making processes. To conclude, Madam Chair, we would be pleased to join the working group and contribute to the process. Thank you.
Thank you, CIC. I will take Amboseli, followed by Na'iwi and Taranaki Collective. Amboseli, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As a first time to speak, I think it is befitting to congratulate Panama for the reception and hospitality, and also to congratulate your election to chair the committee. Well, I speak in support of extension of the working group's mandate, considering for sure the imperatives of COVID that did not allow proper engagement that is appreciated by all the speakers. I think it will only be good to ensure that the continuation and as appropriate to indicate that without any insinuation that the delays of the 6 years happened because of this intersessional working group that was only created at COP18. I think with that, we need to just go in the good spirit of everybody appreciating the importance of the engagement of indigenous people and local communities. And we see how to further it to ensure that it's done with the urgency that is required, but has been articulated very well by so many. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Amboseli. Na'iwi or Taranaki Collective, you have the floor.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. As it is our first time speaking at this conference, Ngā Iwi o Taranaki wishes to acknowledge the people of Panama for your warm and generous hospitality. We also recognise all the nations here and the indigenous peoples that you represent, and we acknowledge your role, Madam Chair, in this important discussion. Ngā Iwi o Taranaki is a collective of 8 indigenous peoples from across the region of Taranaki on the west coast of the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. We appreciate the recognition of the need for Indigenous peoples to be regarded as critical partners in these discussions, as we all have a vested interest in understanding and influencing the work of CITES and how it can support the intergenerational and intercultural use of natural resources as it relates to the applied cultures of all Indigenous peoples in our contemporary world. We are very new to this forum, Madam Chair, but we are in total support of the continuation of this discussion and would appreciate the opportunity to work with Aotearoa's Management Authority to participate in the working group during the intersessional conversations. Kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I will take Namiland, followed by Kenya Wildlife Conservation, followed by David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation. Namiland, you have the floor.
I thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair. As this is the first time we are taking the floor, we would like to congratulate you as Chair and thank Panama for its hospitality. I'm making this intervention on behalf of Ngamiland Council of Non-Governmental Organization, Nkongo, and the communities we work with in Botswana. We are disappointed that this process has taken so long until now, and we recognize that COVID-19 has caused problems in the last transitional period, but it has been 6 years since this issue was first introduced. On behalf of rural communities in Botswana, we would like to support the intervention of Botswana and other countries who have had similar things, who have said these similar things. It is time for CITES to include the views and perspectives of rural communities, and we cannot just keep speaking about it. We need some concrete actions and way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Namiland, Kenya Wildlife Conservation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association wishes to congratulate the Republic of Panama and its people for the wonderful organization of this COP. We also wish to congratulate you, Chair, and your team for the leadership in the discussions of this committee. Madam Chair, Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association is making this intervention as the national body and representative of over 200 communities and landowners who host and conserve over 68% of wildlife on over 5 million hectares of Kenya's landmass, which is approximately 11% of our land area and impacting on over 1 million households. Our wildlife conservancies complement Kenya national parks and reserves by providing habitats, facilitating connectivity, and more importantly, offer sustainable and decent livelihood options for the local communities. In the aforegoing, the involvement of IPLCs in CITES processes is quite crucial. And therefore, Madam Chair, we make these submissions on behalf of the conservancies and also on behalf of the larger fraternity of the Conservation Alliance of Kenya. Madam Chair, Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association aligns to the submission made by Kenya, and in particular, we support the recommendation by the Standing Committee on adoption of the revised decision contained in Annex 1 of CoP19 Doc 13. This is, however, subject to the amendment of Decision 17.5 as revised in CoP18 by considering the use of the term indigenous people and local communities, which is the widely recognized and accepted term in majority of the relevant multilateral environment agreements and other international forums. The indigenous peoples and local communities is a more inclusive term compared to the term rural communities and just local communities, both of which have varied national, legal, and practical implications and interpretation across the globe. Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association supports also the constitution of the working group as recommended under Decision 18.31, paragraph A, and request or recommends that clarity of its mandate is provided and with balance of parties and observers ensured, so that neither of the groups is overrepresented in the membership of the working group. In regards to paragraph 19AA, that is part A of it, KWC or Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association is opposed to the proposed amendment and instead aligns to the proposals made by the parties, that parties engage indigenous peoples and its local communities in CITES and decision-making processes and CITES decision and implementation processes at national levels. It is imperative that parties enhance collaboration with their respective indigenous peoples and local communities, as this will go a long way in harnessing the objects of this convention. In regards to paragraph 19AA part B that calls for parties to share their experiences and lessons learned in engaging indigenous peoples in CITES, KWCA or Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association supports these recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya Wildlife Conservancies. With your indulgence, David Shepherd, Guinea is asking for the floor. Guinea, I'd like to come back to you if you have a comment to make before I finish with the observers. I will close my observer list now. Guinea, would you like to take the floor?
Merci. Madame, je crois que tout ce qui a été dit, ça y va dans l'intérêt de la conservation des espèces de faune et de flore à protéger. L'implication effective des communautés a tout son pesant d'or, en ce sens que c'est les communautés pour une coexistence pacifique entre la faune sauvage et les hommes. Les communautés doivent jouer un rôle important en ce sens que les communautés, c'est à elles d'être informées, sensibilisées, conscientisées pour qu'il y ait une harmonie entre la gestion de nos patrimoines. Et donc, l'implication de la communauté dans les propositions décisionnelles de la CITES, la Guinée vraiment a sa position très claire. Nous soutenons ce document et que l'engagement pour la sécurisation également des sites écologiques des faunes, notamment des espèces de la CITES, font partie de ça. Donc, la Guinée maintient sa position de soutien de ce document. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Guinea. Noting that I had closed my parties list earlier and I'm seeing very strong support for this. I have another party asking for the floor before we go to David Shepherd. I will take the party that's asking for the floor, but then I will move on to David Shepherd and come back because I think we have a very clear way forward here. So Senegal, you have the floor, but if you could keep it brief, that would be very welcome.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Je crois que la participation des communautés locales et autochtones est un aspect très important dans la gestion des ressources. Je vais plutôt mettre le paquet sur le Sénégal que je maîtrise plus. Nous avons une division du territoire en collectivités territoriales dans lesquelles sont inféodées les ressources naturelles que sont la faune et la flore. C'est pour dire que dans notre programme d'approche, nous ne saurions mettre en valeur ces ressources naturelles sans qu'il y ait des retombées aussi positives pour la population qui sont gestionnaires des territoires dans lesquels sont inféodées la biodiversité. Le Sénégal n'a rien de contre la participation au niveau international des peuples et des communautés locales, mais d'abord, j'évoque une meilleure introspection de chaque État pour voir à son niveau national qu'est-ce qui est fait en termes de rétribution aux populations locales. Je crois que c'est là le débat. Parce que nos textes, les États ont l'obligation de veiller, de booster le développement socio-économique de leur peuple. Le niveau national, je crois que le Gabon l'a dit, c'est très bien, mais regardez pour venir ici, le Sénégal n'a reçu qu'un billet de subvention du secrétariat. Le reste, on s'est débrouillé. Demandez encore aux populations de venir. Je n'ai rien de contre, mais ce sera qu'une seule voix qui sera portée à l'international. Et nous sommes là pour le peuple sénégalais. Venez au Sénégal, ce n'est pas un pays de grandes forêts, mais je prends un exemple. Dans l'aménagement que nous faisons aux forestiers pour la satisfaction des besoins énergétiques des populations locales. Qu'est-ce qui est fait? Sur la recette des exploitations, 40% revient aux populations locales. Alors, si dans une région, vous avez fait un chiffre d'affaires de 1 milliard de commercialisation de charbon, mais les 400 millions vont aux populations. Voilà des dispositions qu'il faut prendre pour exhorter les populations à se reconnaître. Parce que si les populations ne se retrouvent pas dans ce que nous faisons, elles ont une position marginale par rapport aux activités de développement menées par l'État. À mon avis, c'est là qu'il faut mettre le paquet. J'ai visité pas mal de pays, même quand je vais dans des pays avec des collègues, je demande qu'est-ce que vous faites pour les populations. Parce que moi, je suis issu de ce peuple local. Je suis du village, moi. Je suis du village. On ne saurait exploiter et prendre toute la richesse par l'État et laisser rien aux populations et venir au niveau international de plaider pour une participation de ces populations alors que nous ne faisons pas grand-chose pour ces populations. Commençons d'abord au niveau national et puis pour aller à l'international. C'est là, à mon avis, que se trouve le débat. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. And for our final speaker, I invite David Shepherd, Wildlife Foundation. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to support Togo, the US, Kenya, Gabon, and the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association. As they mentioned, engagement, and other parties have said, engagement of IPLCs at national level is important for implementation of CITES, but we don't support the Secretariat's proposal to insert international. in decision 18.33b as revised for COP19. But I want to highlight the need for balance in the working group, which Togo mentioned, both regionally and among constituencies of observers, because we felt there was not balance in the working group that was convened after COP18, with one particular constituency being overrepresented in relation to conservation NGOs, who were largely excluded from the group, even though many have programs to support engagement of indigenous peoples and local communities at local level. We would like to also support Togo's point that all observer participants should have official status, which we believe was not the case after COP18. If this working group is formed, we would like to express interest in joining. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, David Shepherd, Wildlife Foundation. I'm sorry, I've closed my observers lists some time ago, so I will just take a moment with the Secretariat. Thank you, everyone. So I think based on our discussions, we've seen lots of support for this work continuing. And so we are asked to make a recommendation regarding the revised decisions contained in Annex 1 to the document. So in that regard, I've heard almost universal support for maintaining the mandate of this group as outlined in the decisions in Annex 1. So I'm proposing that we recommend that those revised decisions are adopted. With regard to New Zealand's suggestion that we refer in the decision to COP19 INF 29, unfortunately the Secretariat's confirmed that that's not possible, but we will note that the relevance of that document to this discussion. With regard to the Secretariat's proposed new decision 19AA, we are going to adopt this new decision with the exception of the references, with the exception of the amendments that include the references to international. So the amendments in that section, the deletion of the introduction of the words and international and the introduction of the S on levels we don't adopt. The remaining parts of that decision we do. So we recommend, those are our recommendations to the COP. Don't see any objection to that. everybody followed. Thank you very much. I have two parties requesting the floor. China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just now, according to the interventions made by the parties, actually, we do heard that there are support for indigenous people and the local communities to participate at the international level. So we suggest that these and the international levels be retained as revised by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, China. I recorded mostly opposition to that. I have opposition to those language from, at a minimum, Togo, United States, Kenya, and Gabon. So that's my record. I believe that's the Secretariat's record as well. Yeah. I also have Kenya asking for the floor, so I might go to Kenya, and I'll come back to you, China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry for getting you back. I did not get the direction that we are taking. Are we reconstituting the working group, or because there was a call for a change of a chair, and it was our proposal to reconstitute the group?
Thank you, Kenya. And I did note that these are decisions directed to the Standing Committee, and it will be for the Standing Committee to decide the membership and the chairpersonship of that working group. It's not a matter for the COP. So I think we can note the comments in that regard, and the Standing Committee will make those decisions when they convene this working group. China, did you have a response to my comment?
Yes, we want to propose that we launch a vote on whether we add any international levels or not. I hope you can accept my suggestion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you everyone for your patience. We're just getting things straight up here on the podium. So parties, we have had a request for a vote from China. So we will be voting. I need everyone in the party area to sit down, and I need anyone who's not a party to step out of the party area. If there are any local staff available, it would be helpful if you could come down and just keep an eye on the space between the parties and the back of the room. I need everyone in the parties to take their seats, please. Anyone in the party area, please take your seats. Are they ready? I still have people standing in the party area. All right, thank you. So I will be clear as I understand it. China, correct me if I'm wrong, but the vote you have called is on whether to insert the language around international in draft decision 19AA directed to the parties. So it is around the inclusion of the words and international.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. So parties, if you vote yes, to be clear, you would like the words and international, the reference to international, included in this decision. If you vote no, you do not want it included in this decision. I'm not ready to vote just yet because I still have lots of people moving in the room and I cannot have that, please. It's very important. I understand that some people are coming from next door, but I'll get you to take your seats as soon as you can, please. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Solicitamos a los delegados de tomar asiento, por favor, para proceder a la votación. S'il vous plaît, on va procéder à la votation, mais pour ça, il faut que vous soyez assis, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I will start the voting procedure now. This is a vote on CoP19 document 13. The voting type is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the individual member states. Since this is a vote on a substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. Thank you, technicians. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Forty seconds are up. The ballot's now closed. Technicians, please show the result on the main screen. So the vote is not adopted by a 2/3 majority. Technicians, please show the individual votes of the parties on the screen now.
Individual votes will be shown in a second. Thank you.
I know the text is small and it moves fast, parties, so I would give you a little while to take a look. Thank you, parties. Hope that's enough time for you to have seen the votes. So we have not adopted the language on international, so we have our recommendations stand as per the recommendations that I read out when we concluded the matter. So noting the time and that we have only got 15 minutes before our dinner break, I would like to at least introduce document 14. But we will not be able to finish our deliberations, so I might have it, I have the introduction and then we might finish for the evening and come back. So CoP19 document 14 on livelihoods. This document has been submitted by the Standing Committee, and I understand the chair of the Standing Committee has asked Peru to introduce the document. Peru, you have the floor. Technicians, can you give Peru the floor, please? Peru, your microphone is working. We can hear you from your microphone.
Gracias, secretaria. Perú tiene el agrado de presentar el documento 14 de la Conferencia de las Partes,
como presidente del Grupo de Trabajo de Medios de Subsistencia. Este documento resume brevemente las varias actividades conducidas por el Grupo de Trabajo y la Secretaría para implementar las decisiones 1833 hasta 1837 sobre los medios de subsistencia. Tal como se reportó en la 74 reunión del Comité Permanente, la Secretaría ha hecho progresos en la compilación de nuevos estudios de casos sobre CITES y los medios de subsistencia, la revisión de nuevos casos, la preparación de las guías sobre cómo maximizar los beneficios de la implementación de la Convención y el comercio de las especies incluidas en los apéndices de las CITES para los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales, el estudio sobre la posibilidad de usar marcas o productos certificados y la producción de materiales de divulgación. Luego de las consultas con la Secretaría, el Comité Permanente ha propuesto un borrador de enmiendas para la decisión de la Conferencia de las Partes que puede ser encontrados en el anexo 1 del presente documento. Esto para asegurar la continuidad del trabajo sobre los medios de subsistencia con los necesarios ajustes a los mandatos. Las partes notarán que la revisión de la guía y el estudio dirigido por la Secretaría antes mencionado está ahora incluido como parte de las tareas del grupo de trabajo. Hemos notado en los comentarios de la Secretaría sobre este documento la sugerencia de mover el párrafo B de la decisión 1833, Rep. CoP19, dirigida a las partes, al borrador de decisiones sobre el involucramiento de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales contenidas en el anexo 1 del documento 13 sobre el involucramiento de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades, a fin de resolver la superposición de decisiones para los grupos de medios de subsistencia y el de involucramiento de los pueblos indígenas, esto en línea con la propuesta de Perú en el Comité Permanente 74 de que ambos grupos pueden trabajar en sinergia, pero teniendo cada grupo un claro mandato. Podemos entonces estar de acuerdo con esta sugerencia. Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Peru. I'd like to open the floor for parties. I see Burkina Faso.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Le Burkina Faso a attentivement analysé ce document ainsi que les travaux du groupe de travail et le rapport du secrétariat à la SC74. Nous avons noté plusieurs insuffisances dans le processus et nous souhaitons donc relever les préoccupations concernant les projets de décision 18.33 et 18.35 en annexe 1. Nous ne pouvons pas soutenir leur renouvellement. D'abord, parce que le processus de ce groupe de travail était fortement dirigé par le secrétariat, sans suffisamment une consultation avec les parties, sans examen adéquat, nous le pensons, des questions, et sans, j'allais dire, une certaine transparence insuffisante. Également, les études de cas dans l'annexe 2, mandatées par le secrétariat et les lignes directrices, qui en résultent, sont fortement biaisées de notre point de vue et ne montrent que des bénéfices monétaires du commerce des espèces inscrites à la CITES, sans tenir compte des coûts et des impacts du commerce, ni des structures de marché qui déterminent la distribution des bénéfices et la durabilité. Donc, nous recommandons donc à la COP de ne pas adopter les projets de décision révisés 18.33, REV COP 19 à 18.37, REV COP 19, en ce qui concerne la poursuite du groupe de travail sur la CITES et les moyens d'existence. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. I see China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Local livelihoods are the fundamental basis for conserving species. Giving due attention to the importance of livelihoods in the decision-making processes of CITES is lagging behind the progressive trends worldwide. It is not in line with Sustainable Development Goals and the UN resolution on the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Madam Chair, as with the CoP13, this issue is nothing new, and in order to meet internationally agreed upon human rights standards, a scaling up of resources and political will is imperative. China supports adopting the revised draft decisions in Annex 1 to CoP19 Doc 14. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. I see Togo, followed by Mexico.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Togo soutient l'intervention du Burkina Faso. Les communautés locales traditionnelles jouent un rôle essentiel dans la conservation de la faune et la flore sauvage. Leur relation culturelle avec la nature, qui a évolué au fil des siècles, comprend de nombreux éléments qui sont d'une importance fondamentale pour la conservation de la biodiversité et la garantie des moyens de subsistance d'une manière véritablement durable. Un faible impact écologique et des utilisations très diversifiées des espèces sauvages et domestiques sont quelques-unes des caractéristiques fondamentales des cultures traditionnelles dans notre pays, qui sont, comme la faune sauvage, également menacée. C'est précisément pour ces raisons que l'intensification de l'exploitation des espèces sauvages et du commerce international ne peuvent constituer des solutions à la pauvreté chronique et à l'insécurité économique dont souffrent souvent nos communautés locales traditionnelles. De plus, il est incomplet de parler des bénéfices monétaires du commerce des espèces inscrites à la CITES sans examiner les impacts négatifs de ce commerce ou comment ces bénéfices sont distribués. En effet, ce sont généralement les opérateurs économiques et les sociétés multinationales qui profitent de ce commerce et non les communautés locales. Nous sommes donc opposés au projet de décision révisé 18.33, la COP19, à 18.37, COP19, en ce qui concerne la poursuite du groupe de travail intersessionnel sur la CITES et les moyens d'existence. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Togo. Mexico, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. México apoya la renovación de las decisiones para continuar los trabajos en materia de medios de subsistencia, incluyendo el análisis de los estudios de caso para identificar buenas prácticas y lecciones aprendidas, la revisión del proyecto de orientación sobre obtención de máximos beneficios del comercio de especies CITES para los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales, el análisis del uso de marcas registradas, certificación y trazabilidad para productos de especies CITES elaborados por los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales, la publicación de los estudios de caso y materiales de difusión y la evaluación de los progresos logrados en la aplicación de la resolución CONF 16.6 Ref COP 18. Queremos expresar nuestra preocupación respecto de la traducción del documento, pues la versión en español presenta diferencias respecto del documento presentado en inglés. En particular, solicitamos a la Secretaría su apoyo para la revisión de los párrafos A y C de la decisión 18.33 donde se detectaron varias inconsistencias, incluso en el sentido del texto. Con gusto podemos proporcionar a la Secretaría nuestras observaciones al respecto. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Mexico. That would be helpful. So we have 5 more minutes of this session. I have recorded all of the parties that have requested the floor. I won't be able to take all of you in 5 minutes, but I will take a couple more, probably one by one, and then we will have to recommence this issue after our evening break. So next on my list is Israel. Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We are uneasy with various aspects of the proposal, and particularly those that seek to promote various aspects of the trade. An example of this is a suggestion of creating a CITES certification mechanism. It is obvious that such certifications would be used to endorse or facilitate the marketing of specimens of CITES-listed species. But CITES is a regulatory agreement and should not be engaged in promoting the trade that it regulates. Annex 4 of this proposal includes a table listing 7 examples of organizations that apply certification standards. We've looked into these 7, and we agree that all seem to be reputable organizations that apply reasonable standards. But each of these organizations is an NGO. Some are registered charities, others are foundations, other nonprofit groups. None of these are government agencies. None are treaty organizations. And that is as it should be. We, as a convention, a multilateral convention, must avoid endorsing, certifying, or promoting any aspect of the trade that we are responsible to regulate and sometimes to enforce. Chair, we'd prefer that the COP agree that the tasks defined in decisions 18.33 through 18.37 have been accomplished and there's no further action required on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. I think my final speaker for this session, noting I have captured the parties who are on my list in front of me, so we will start again with the parties who have requested the floor. Maldives, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maldives thanks the Standing Committee for the document 14 on livelihoods. Maldives is a country that is heavily dependent on our biodiversity. In this regard, Maldives is dependent on the use of CITES-listed species that contributes to the livelihood of local communities. As such, with previous COP listings, there has been involvement of management authority and scientific authority together with stakeholders in facilitating sustainable trade of these CITES-listed species. We therefore support the draft decisions in Annex 1 of this document. Case studies on livelihoods related to CITES species would be very beneficial in the conservation and sustainable use of CITES-listed species. As such, best practices and lessons learned would help policy recommendations. We therefore support the draft decisions presented in Annex 1 of this document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Maldives. Okay, thank you, everyone. We will put a pin in our discussions and return after our evening break. I'm going to ask the Secretariat to make some housekeeping and logistics announcements, and then we'll break.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that the drafting group under item 88, the communication concerning amendments to the appendices, will be meeting during this break at 5:30 in room ISTMO 2. So the drafting group under item 88 will be meeting in ISTMO 2, it's on the upper level, at 5:30. And then please remember to take your cards with you as you leave, and I'm sure we should be here 6:45, Chair.
6:45, please, parties and observers.